Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
(2015) Mounds View, Minnesota. 32-year-old Henry McCabe was an auditor for the state of Minnesota. He was married and had 2 kids with whom he lived a happy and successful life. That would all change on September 7th of 2015 when Henry mysteriously vanished. He was last seen by 2 friends who reported that they had gone to a nightclub on the night in question. The acquaintance told us that he dropped McCabe off not too far from the club a little after 2 or so in the morning at a local gas station's convenience store. There's been some searching done by both volunteer groups and our own law enforcement personnel along possible routes he perhaps may have walked if he tried to get back home. Nothing of any significance has been discovered yet. Apparently, these 2 friends took Henry's keys and wallet away from him because, according to them, he was too drunk and they wanted to prevent him from buying more drinks. At around 2:28 a.m. on the morning of his disappearance, Corrine McCabe, Henry's wife, received a startling voicemail from her husband. The message hardly contained any words. It was mostly a series of animalistic growls and moans. At one point during the voicemail, Henry's voice can be heard saying, "I've been shot," and at the very end of the message you can hear a different voice say, "Stop it." Corrine was away in California at the time of Henry's disappearance, and she believed the voicemail might contain clues as to how and why he had gone missing. Unfortunately, the police reported that they were unable to make any definitive conclusions about the disturbing voicemail. Henry McCabe was officially reported missing the morning after the voicemail, and there have been no reported sightings of him since. The police sent the voicemail to the FBI for further analysis. Kinney has stated that the police aren't ruling out any possibilities, whether it be that he disappeared on his own, or if there was some kind of accident involved, or if there was some other intentional act of harm someone tried to bring upon to Henry. The Mounds View police have also enlisted the help of the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, who are acting as the lead investigative unit in the case. On November 2nd of 2015, the police received a call about a dead body that had been found in Rush Lake in New Brighton, Minnesota. Law enforcement confiscated the remains and determined that it was in fact Henry McCabe. The autopsy revealed the cause of death to be drowning, but it was impossible for the authorities to determine if he had sustained any other injuries. The corpse was too decomposed for any further information to be uncovered. There are multiple theories about what happened to Henry McCabe and what the mysterious voicemail was all about. One theory suggests that Henry was intoxicated and accidentally wandered into the lake, where he subsequently drowned. According to this theory, the voicemail would have simply been a drunk butt dial. However, this doesn't explain the content of the message itself. Another theory suggests that Henry may have been scared by a wild animal or another person and accidentally ended up in the lake. This theory also does not account for the noises heard in the voicemail. The final theory is the most chilling. It's entirely possible that Henry was the victim of foul play. An unidentified third party may have targeted Henry for unknown reasons, and the noises heard in the voicemail could have been him struggling with this person or even possibly expressing physical pain. It's also important to note that there has been a lot of suspicion regarding Henry's so-called friends. Why had they dropped him off at the gas station when they knew he didn't have his keys or wallet? Some people who have researched this case believe that these friends were responsible for Henry's death, but this possibility has never been substantiated. The disappearance and death of Henry McCabe is still unsolved. Hopefully new findings will come to light soon so that his family can have some closure. Today's video topic was suggested by one of my subscribers. If you have a video topic that you want to see, suggest it in the comments below and I'll get around to it as soon as I can. This next voicemail has made the rounds on social media, most notably TikTok. Molly Dare, a producer and podcaster, posted a video on the platform in which she reacted to a voicemail that had originally been left by a man known as Dimitri. Keep in mind, the voicemail was not originally sent to Molly Dare. She was simply reacting to the audio and bringing more widespread attention to it.
Hi there, Olga. It's Dimitri calling again, the guy from the street. I left you a message several days ago. You said you were interested. Now, here's the way I work. I don't like leaving second messages, but I like you. You're a very elegant woman. You're very attractive. But, I don't play that game. I know your friends tell you not to return calls. You're playing games like you see on stupid TV shows. So here's how it's going to work. It is now 4:30 on Wednesday. Now, I'll assume that you've already left work because, some people leave early. And I'll grant you that. But if I do not receive a phone call back from you by 3 o'clock Thursday afternoon, I'm no longer interested, and you can erase my number. I don't play games like that. I'm completely single. I'm very intelligent. I'm great in bed. I make great money. Believe it or not, I'm a complete catch. I've only been single 4 months. I had a long-distance relationship. Went a year. It's very tough to maintain it like that, and it didn't work out. There's nothing wrong with me. Matter of fact, I'm one of the few men in the city that has nothing wrong with him. So I'm giving you that 3 o'clock deadline. If I don't hear from you, you lose my number. I'm erasing yours right now, so you won't be hearing back from me. So that's it. 3 o'clock tomorrow, or you can just completely forget it. Now, I understand if you've got other issues, like maybe you're not playing games, maybe you've had, maybe you were abused in childhood, maybe your mother has cancer, you're going to chemo, maybe you're just a person who's extremely frightened or has an anxiety disorder, maybe you're on some medication for that. I don't know. There could be another issue that I'm not aware of. But nobody says, call me, hands a person a business card, and then doesn't return calls. It's extremely passive-aggressive. You should actually look that up, passive-aggressive personality disorder. And you let me know if you've got issues, psychological issues, if you're on any sort of medication for anxiety or depression, I'm not interested. Okay? But if you're psychologically normal and you haven't called me because there's been some horrible thing that's happened in your life which prevented you, that's fine. But otherwise, don't call me. Okay? Bye.
The voicemail audio is the embodiment of the term red flags. Dimitri is very creepy and even accuses the woman he was addressing of having psychological issues, which he thinks were what caused her to avoid interacting with him. This is a textbook example of gaslighting as well. However, you might be wondering who Dimitri actually is. The answer is rather disturbing. Dimitri was an alias for a man named James Sears, a Canadian who taught courses on how to seduce women. These courses were not his only line of work. Sears was also the editor for an anti-Semitic tabloid that promoted the New Constitution Party, a Canadian political party that is dedicated to discriminating against Jewish people. In January of 2019, Sears was arrested and convicted for willful promotion of hatred against women and Jewish people. In August of that same year, he was released on bail before his hearing. However, he was incarcerated yet again after his appeal was denied. He was eventually released on bail in October of 2021, but he was arrested yet again after violating the terms of his parole in February of 2022. It's disturbing to think that people like James Sears exist and are even willing to put their perverted tendencies to the test. Let's hope he stays in prison for the foreseeable future. Sojourner Truth was born into slavery in New York in 1797. She, like most others, was subjected to cruel treatment and extreme violence. She eventually managed to escape in 1827 with one of her children, and they fled to a family of abolitionists, the Van Wagners. They bought her freedom, and Sojourner spent the rest of her life dedicated to the abolition of slavery and women's rights. A museum in South Sacramento was named after her in 1996, the Sojourner Truth African Heritage Museum. The institution is dedicated to education about abolition, women's rights, and culture. On the morning of July 30th, 2023, the museum received a chilling voicemail. The voicemail threatened the lives of black children, and many parents in the local community were deeply disturbed, some even choosing to keep their kids home from school.
In California, agendas are active to murder black children in the Sacramento area. Murders are to be in cold blood with no remorse.
The message itself seems to be AI generated due to the robotic nature of the voice, and the Sacramento Police Department began an investigation. They stated that the police department is aware of the disturbing and threatening voicemail that was posted on social media. We currently have detectives that are actively investigating the circumstances of these threats. Preliminarily, we do not believe these threats to be credible. We believe there is no outstanding threat to the community. However, detectives will continue to investigate this matter. Law enforcement was able to identify the person responsible for the email, but they refused to publicly name them. They also stated that evidence from their investigation suggested the threat was not credible and it did not constitute a crime. No arrests will be made in relation to this incident. Many people strongly disagree with this decision. The Black Lives Matter movement in Sacramento stated that Sacramento PD's lack of enthusiasm to protect black children and black families from terrorist threats isn't surprising, but is extremely disappointing. This would have been an opportunity for Sacramento PD to show they are trying harder to protect black families instead of continuing the ongoing abuse. California Statute 422A seems to provide legal justification for the police to arrest the person who made this voicemail. The statute specifically states, even if there is no intent of actually carrying it out, the threatening party shall be punished by imprisonment in the county jail not to exceed 1 year, or by imprisonment in the state prison. Granted, I'm not a legal expert by any stretch of the imagination, but the wording of this statute specifically mentions a lack of intent not mattering. The offender can still be arrested. If anybody has more information to share on this case and the statute itself, let me know in the comments. Valentine's Day 2014, Christina Field's son, Louis, was found unresponsive in the boys' bathroom at Carson Middle School. They found him with his belt around his neck. They all think he killed himself, so they all jumped to the conclusion that he was bullied. However, Christina disagreed with everyone. Her son had never showed any signs of depression, and there had never been any previous incidents of bullying. In her mind, something didn't add up. Roughly a week after Louis' death, Christina went back through the messages on her phone, and she found one from her son. When she listened to it, she determined that it must have been a butt dial, but what she heard chilled her to the core. Most of the message was garbled and unintelligible, but the few pieces Christina picked up were about a friend choking Louis. This voicemail led Christina to believe that Louis had perished as a result of the choking game. According to the CDC, the choking game is a way for kids and teenagers to get a rush, somewhat similar to getting high. As the name implies, one person chokes another until they decide it's been enough. There is also a version of the game that kids play on their own, which involves wrapping a belt around your neck. Christina believed her son had played the latter version of the game due to his belt having been found around his neck. While searching online, I came across some posts from people who claim that they've witnessed the choking game either first or secondhand. Apparently, it's actually a fairly widespread problem, and some schools have been forced to send emails about the game in order to inform parents and get it to stop. These posts also mention something else, one of Christina's methods of punishment for Louis. According to these posts, Christina made her son sit at the dinner table and not move while she recorded the whole ordeal. Some people have said that they think this is an extreme measure, while others say it was probably just Christina's way of teaching Louis table manners. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any other sources referencing this incident, so I can't even say with certainty that it happened. At any rate, the school district stated that they do not believe their schools had a problem with the choking game at all. In response, Christina said, "They can say whatever they want, but they're just in denial and obviously don't want to take responsibility." It's unknown whether or not the choking game was the real culprit behind Louis' death, and it doesn't seem likely that we will ever find out for certain. Deborah Wolfe was born on June 19th of 1957 in Blytheville, Arkansas. She eventually became a nurse and started working at the Fayetteville Veterans Administration Medical Center. She was described as dedicated, happy, and caring. Debbie's parents had gotten divorced, and her mother, Jenny, remarried to a man named John Edwards. Debbie had 2 older brothers and 1 younger brother. She lived in an isolated cabin on MacArthur Road, a short distance outside Fayetteville, North Carolina. There was a small irrigation pond near the cabin as well. On Christmas Day of 1985, Debbie spent the day with her mother and stepfather with various other family members. The holiday went well and nothing unusual happened. Debbie's next shift at the Veterans Hospital finished at 4 p.m. on December 26th, and she was seen driving home. It's unknown if she ever made it back to the cabin. Her next shift started at 8 a.m. the next day, but Debbie failed to show up. That was extremely unusual for her, especially considering she hadn't even bothered to call out sick first. Her coworkers attempted to call her home phone, but she never picked up. Eventually, her coworkers contacted her mother and stepfather, who drove to the cabin along with a family friend to check in with Debbie. Red flags were immediately raised once they reached the property. Debbie's 2 dogs, Morgan and Mason, were wandering around the front yard, and they appeared to be very hungry. Empty beer cans were scattered around the property, and it was a brand of beer that Debbie never drank. Her car was parked in a different spot than normal, and the driver's seat had been pushed much farther back than it usually was, suggesting that a person much taller than Debbie had last driven it. The inside of the house was no better. There were personal items everywhere, all across the floor and furniture. One of Debbie's nursing uniforms was on the kitchen floor, but it wasn't even the uniform that she had been wearing the previous day. The uniform she had been wearing had a coffee stain on it, and to this day, nobody has ever found it. Jenny and John proceeded to listen to Debbie's answering machine, where they found an ominous message. It was a male voice that was calling from the hospital.
Hey Deb, missed you here at work today. Just wondering how you doing. If you're able to give me a call up here at the ward, I'm at 8. Or I'll give you a call at home tonight. You've been out a lot of days. You may be worried when you miss another one. Just want to make sure you're okay. Bye.
Although the message may seem innocent at first, Jenny and John found it suspicious. It had been left on December 27th, and Debbie had worked on December 26th, so why had the caller said she missed a lot of days? She hadn't even taken off of work in a while. They finally decided to call the police, and an investigation began. Law enforcement brought bloodhounds to the property, but they failed to turn up any new evidence. Jenny stated that she thought the search effort had been lazy. According to her, the deputies walked around the property but never actually looked in the pond. On January 1st, Jenny hired a family friend named Gordon Childress to perform a dive into the pond. Gordon stated that it only took him about 2 minutes to find 2 sets of footprints and drag marks in the mud. When he followed these marks deeper, he found a 55-gallon oil drum. Debbie had used a similar barrel to store firewood outside the cabin, but this time, it contained something much darker. Debbie's corpse had been stuffed inside the barrel. This is where the waters start to get a little murky. After Gordon found the barrel, Jenny contacted the police and they arrived at the property, ready to retrieve Debbie's body. They removed the corpse and left the barrel, telling Jenny that they would remove the barrel the next day. When Jenny asked police officers about the barrel the following day, they told her that there was no barrel. The police outright denied that a barrel had been found at the bottom of the pond. When the water level of the pond was reduced, no barrel was present. Gordon Childress insisted that there had been a barrel when he searched the pond, but the police told him that he had most likely seen Debbie's jacket ballooned around her in the water. The coroner performed an autopsy that revealed the cause of death to be drowning, but Debbie's family did not accept this. Her upper bronchial area only contained about half a teaspoon of water. There was no white froth, which is typical of drowning victims, and her eyes and mouth were both closed, which also contradicted the typical drowning victim. Furthermore, several abrasions were found on Debbie's fingers. Despite all of this, the police announced that the case was closed and Debbie had accidentally drowned. Jenny refused to accept their conclusion. The pond was very shallow and it had a slope, not a drop-off, meaning it would have been extremely unlikely for anyone to drown. When her body had been found, she had been wearing numerous items of clothing that did not belong to her, including a pair of men's trainers that did not fit and an army field jacket without a name tag. All of the clothes were also in great condition, which was extremely suspicious. The pond was very silty, but the clothing appeared to have been cleaned. The State Bureau of Investigation denied having cleaned the clothing. A short while later, a family friend named Franz Schoaf visited the cabin to feed Debbie's dogs. As he walked around the pond, he discovered Debbie's hat on the opposite bank from where she had supposedly entered the water. Given the fact that it was winter and there was a thin layer of ice on the surface, it was very unlikely that the hat had simply floated there. This further suggested that Debbie had not accidentally entered the water. There were two main suspects in Debbie's death, both of them being hospital volunteers. Debbie herself was responsible for coordinating the volunteers, meaning she would have had close contact with both suspects. The first man had a history of psychiatric illness and was known to make phone calls to Debbie's house. He also wanted to start a romantic relationship with her. A few days after he was questioned by law enforcement, he left the state. The second suspect was known to ask Debbie out on dates frequently, but she rejected him each time. He was thought to be the person who had left the message on her answering machine, but the police cleared him of involvement. Jenny spent the rest of her life insisting that her daughter had been abducted and murdered by one of the suspects, then returned to her property after her death. The police continued refusing to acknowledge this possibility, insisting that Debbie's death had been an accidental drowning. To this day, the circumstances surrounding her death are unknown, and the truth doesn't seem likely to ever be revealed. Click on the Join button to become a channel member today. Channel members receive exclusive content and early access to all my content.